Crossover. Donny Cates.
No one's really talking about this book anymore.
We're going to have to fix that. What do you think?
I'm kind of stressed out about this, actually. I've been worried about how to describe this comic. And
Donny Cates, Jeff Shaw.
Donny Cates, Jeff Shaw, D. Cuniff?
Cuniff?
I don't know how to pronounce their last name, but
we apologize.
It's a great creative team.
John J. Hill. Crossover. This book is very, very important that everyone reads. If you like comic books, if you've been a fan of comic books for longer than a couple of years,
right?
If you indulge in more than just like the trifecta at DC, if you pick up more than, if you get independent comic books, if you have a pretty large fandom, there's going to be something in this run that speaks to you, that's going to make you laugh, that's going to get you excited. We have to tread so lightly with Crossover because the reason why it's magnificent is because of the reveals that are all throughout it and how Donny Cates was able to accomplish doing something that is literally impossible. And that also is why I believe people have gone light on this book.
It's almost like a victim of its own marketing in a way.
It really was. Let's actually take it back a little bit because
rewind. About a year ago.
Okay, about a year ago, there was enough potential Easter eggs that were coming out of Marvel and DC for different reasons. Let's talk about a couple of them.
Sure.
Doomsday
Clock.
Doomsday Clock.
Correct.
What happened?
There was a panel in there that made a brief reference.
Was it 2030?
About Dr. Manhattan seeing in the future where Superman fights a green rage monster who is stronger than Doomsday.
Right. A Thor of a different world.
Just vague references to Marvel characters.
And then around the same time, Donny Cates writes in Thor issue 2 about Black Winter destroying universes.
Correct.
Specifically, a universe where there were leagues of heroes, specifically a speedster and an
Emerald Knight for the Green Lantern.
There we go. We got shoutouts. We even see kind of a Superman-esque
blur.
Blur.
It's clearly the Justice League.
So this is what happened. That all took place, and beyond comic speculation, because it happened in comic spec for sure, the mainstream picked it up. We just talked about Eris Quinones. Variant Comics has a video up talking about this speculation that hit like 350,000 individuals. That's the view count.
Yeah.
It went viral. That was Marvel and DC doing something together. Was Donny Cates involved? Was Jim Lee involved? What could be going on? And people started to really believe it. I wanted it to be true until I went to C2E2 2 years ago. And what would happen is at C2E2, I would interview Donny Cates. I would talk about this particular book. And he would, I didn't ask him specifically if like Marvel was crossing over with DC. I was just like, what's up with these panels? And he straight up laughed and said, I wanted a reason to kill the DC universe. I thought it would be funny. And he says what he always says, I can't believe what I am able to do right now. Like I'm a kid in a candy store attitude. I can't believe they're saying yes to these ideas because it's so damn good. But they're letting him get really close to the line, right? He wanted to kill the DC universe, so he did it. It's kind of like a funny thing he wanted to do. It had nothing to do with the buildup of Marvel and DC. That's when my hopes were kind of crushed about this crossover event, but I still respected the play. I think it was a brilliant thing to put in Thor.
It was fun. It made sense. It kind of gave, a sense of stakes to the Black Winter and, showed you how serious it was. But yeah, it ultimately didn't really mean anything else beyond.
It didn't. But then crossover would get solicited. A book that Donny Cates was writing.
Right.
Now, his tweets about it, hyping it up. I can't believe what they were going to let me get away with. All of this buildup, people confused the two.
Yeah, there was a little bit of anticipation, to say the least.
They were thinking we were going to see Superman in this comic book, or Batman, or anyone from DC.
Wolverine,
Emerald,
Yeah,
we're going to see some crazy crossover event. And it's happening at Image, which is even weirder. Here's the thing. It had nothing to do with one another, and that's not Donny Cates' fault. And every tweet that he had posted hyping this book, if that never happened at DC and he never wrote what he did in Thor, it would all be the same commentary. It is still mind-boggling that he's getting away with what he's doing in crossover. He has every right and reason, and really anyone would do it for what he's getting away with in this comic book that he's doing, to speak about this the way he did. But the expectations were off. That's not what it was. It wasn't a Marvel DC crossover to a degree, because Marvel and DC do crossover in this comic. There are characters in this book, but they are not in the book where he can get sued.
Yeah, they're very clearly aware of the legal limit of how much similarity they're allowed to do. Like, there's characters with claws coming out of their hands. Like, that looks clearly to me like Black Adam right up there at the top.
Yeah, we have,
but it's not exactly him.
And it gets even like more on the nose than that. Now, is this a full-on crossover to other publishing companies? No. Are other publishing companies' IPs insinuated to be in the pages of this book? Absolutely. Is it an Image Comics crossover event? Yes, absolutely. An Image is filled with independent titles that you wouldn't even think would cross over.
Geiger could show up in this book.
Very well could.
At any minute. Like,
Jeff Johns can show up in this book.
Yeah, I think a lot of people dropped this book almost immediately once they realized it was not a Marvel DC crossover. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a mistake. I think you owe it to yourself to give this book, the first arc, a try, because especially in issue 6, there's a lot of the full promise of this book is kind of on full 2-page spread display. And I think if you don't like that, then I think you're allowed to check out, because that's really, for me, that was the payoff of the whole story arc.
See, I disagree. I got to issue 6 and I was hyped about it, but I don't think if you've read to current issue 10, you don't know what you have in your hands yet.
That's true. I would think about it like the MCU, right? Like, you get Avengers, the first Avengers movie, and you see it all happen, and you see the magic of them all teaming up, and that's like, oh my God, I love this. But then you get to like Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame, and you see the full like reveal of everything.
The scope of
I would kind
what's
of
being
compare
done
it to that. There's like an initial like whoa moment, but then you see the scope, and you see what they're actually allowed to play with as the story kind of carries on and gets a little more meta. Mm-hmm. There's no other comic like this right now.
This comic book clearly isn't something with an intention to be made to try to be optioned, which, to each their own. I'm totally fine with creators trying to make that happen. That's how they win long term, and that's how we get these fandoms to emerge in a large sense. A lot of comic books are made to try and create an idea that could carry on somewhere else. I don't get that vibe from this. I don't see this happening ever.
I don't want this to be a movie.
I don't. But that's the beauty of it. You only want this type of narrative in comic books. It could only be done in comic books.
This is a celebration of comic books, and I think you have to, like, this is not a good first comic for someone to read. You have to be familiar with a lot of different properties and characters.
It's not for those types of readers.
Correct.
It's for comic readers, as we mentioned. And I'll go as far to say it's for the industry. It's for other artists and writers to enjoy. Because this is a world where comic book narratives, the genre itself, collides with our timeline and emerge in our reality.
That's the crossover of the story, like comic book.
All.
Yes.
Everything that's ever been drawn, which is kind of a trope to a degree. You know, we've heard narratives like you draw it, it comes to life. But the idea that all comic history, Superman, Batman, all the good guys, Dracula, and all the bad guys exists now in a world that is our own, where issue 2 starts off with the death of Brian K. Vaughan.
This is trash.
Well, wrong one. Wrong one.
Brian
there
K.
it
Vaughan
is.
is not trash.
I love Brian K. Vaughan.
Yes. Brian K. Vaughan, we love you, even if they spell your name wrong.
I need to get my new soundboard. Sorry about that. But yeah, Brian K. Vaughan. Scott Snyder is missing. These creators are all in this comic book. You must have gotten permission to do this. I mean, it's fascinating because it's more than just meta. It's like
it's like super meta.
It's
whatever the
you want to
next
know what it
level
is, Ryan? It's genius.
Oh, they say 'cause it's trash.
No, it's not trash.
It's definitely not
It's
trash.
definitely not trash. No. And we have a comic book that's worth mentioning. So let's give them a little taste of what the book is.
Barely described.
We
the
have.
comic.
Do we even need to get into it more?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it more. So superheroes exist alongside in our reality. They're confined to one area. Comic books have become essentially like canceled because no one likes superheroes except for the diehard comic fans.
Right.
Fans, and it's similar narratives to the comic history that we have. You know,
Kind of like how back in the day they would burn comics, and like there was a lot of social unrest and rage against comic books. Oh, This art too. Jeff Shaw, man. This is like the same team that did God Country, which you need to read, especially if you want to read crossover. Reading God Country first would help.
Yep.
It may or may not, show up in this book, which is kind of the fun of reading crossover.
Yeah.
This page.
Yeah, but it's kind of, what I kind of want to do is that if we end up talking about this again, we'll go in like full spoiler and do a different type of show, because there's a lot. We can do a whole show on Chip Zdarsky's issue.
That's, oh my God. Okay.
Why would you go as far to say that of all of 2021,
Yes.
Chip Zdarsky's issue of crossover was one of the best comic book issues to come out in the entire year?
It would definitely, if I were to make a top 10 issues of 2021, like crossover number 7 would be on that list. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've talked about that comic book, dude.
I think
if you don't know what I'm talking about, comic fam, that's why we're talking about crossover today.
What does that sentence mean?
If you don't know what I'm talking about with Chip Zdarsky writing issue 7.
Yeah, a guest writer takes over. And artist.
If you don't know what I'm talking about there, that's why we have to talk about crossover. You need to read crossover. Because if you don't know at least what happened in crossover with Chip Zdarsky, it doesn't matter if you're not a big fan of Donny Cates. It's not a big fan of any of this like narrative stuff, doesn't intrigue you enough. Oh, Brian Michael Bendis is in the book. Yeah, he's in the book. In the book.
He takes over as a guest writer too. Actually, he writes part of it. I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard balance between like letting you discover some of the surprises for yourself and telling you how awesome this is. This also reminds me of Nice House on the Lake. Actually,
yeah, a little bit. We have, man, that's the thing with this book, is that the best part of it is what happens. It's the reveals. It's discovering it for yourself, experiencing it page by page. There's so much crossover that happens that there's going to be characters you're not familiar with, and then there's going to be characters that you are familiar with. I don't think I want to show them anything else. But what I will leave you with is this. For all the people who were frustrated about there not being more of a crossover that happens, I'm going to give one reveal. An effort to like get you to just get through the 10 issues, because it's going to be worth it. And it's important. Like, this is a special book. It could only be done, honestly, by Donny Cates right now. I can't even think of other I can't think of like top tier writers that can do what Donny Cates is doing in this book.
I actually don't. Snyder, but I don't know if he has like the right.
It's not right.
Yeah, like
it's not
attitude.
Right.
It's something Donny Cates could only
can
do.
I say the ego?
The bad boy of comics.
The bad boy.
Yeah.
You have to have that.
Especially considering what happens
quality.
in number 10. Yeah.
Especially with what happens in number 10. So.
What are you spoiling? You said you were
I'm
going
to spoil it. Okay, so yeah, we don't get Batman and Superman. I don't even want them in the book.
They kind of are. I mean, you see a lot of characters with capes, and like, there's definitely somebody with the arm.
Yes, but but people want to see like, I'm Bruce Wayne, and it says the Batman, and it says trademark. Like, that's what people wanted when they went into this. By the time you get through issue 10, you're not going to feel like that. You're going to be happy with what you get, and happy of how little how much he did and was able to get away with, but didn't go fully over.
Yeah,
the line.
We don't want that.
Where is
the line? Exactly.
Where is the line?
So are you going to show that Spawn page?
We should just get into. Okay, well, we'll spoil it.
We got a lot of good images off of here.
Look at this. God hates masks. This whole first arc is called Kids Love Chains. That's what Todd McFarlane said about 90s books. He's like, oh, kids love chains.
You got to share.
Oh, I got to share it. Here we go.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Here, we'll bring that back up here. So we got God hates masks. Because
it's definitely like a lot of religious groups hate comic books, and there's a lot of protesting outside of comic shops.
A little bit of a trope, yeah, but that's what it's about.
Sure.
It's a tribute to comic books and the history of comic books.
As you can see by this next image.
Yes. We have the comic store owner wearing a shirt saying Wortham was right. Oh.
And the fact that this is the last comic shop in existence, and this comic shop owner is the last comic shop owner in existence. He's like the biggest stereotype of a comic shop. Like
bitter. Imagine, like, it just is what it is, man. It's a hard business, and over time you get kind of discouraged with a lot of different things. And this is someone who's in the last comic shop.
Yeah,
it's like Why the Last Man of comic book stores,
which would be an awesome comic to read anyway.
I know. There we go.
I want a comic about this guy's daily life at a comic shop. But this panel, like, they find this girl who is like a refugee from the bubble where all the comic book characters live, and she has somehow escaped the bubble and is trying to like find her parents. But this is a comic book character in our real world who is in extreme danger because nobody wants her around.
Right.
They're very prejudiced against all superheroes for good reason, because they're kind of bonkers insane.
Yeah, I'm deciding how much I want to reveal at this point. I want to kind of back it up. So what we're going to show you is Okay, so this right here is...
This is about as dedicated of a reveal as you get to, like, that's clearly Batman right there in the left. And that's part of the fun of this comic is, like, looking real close and catching Easter eggs like that.
Sure.
But that's as close as you get to, like, this is Batman.
Right.
He's there. That's him. But you don't need the full page reveal. And I didn't even know this was an homage.
It's an homage in Spawn issue 10. You know, you have Dave Sims and Cerebus, the artwork. And this was a commentary on the kind of trapped nature that creators get in as it pertains to their characters that they create, and then them being taken over by
like corporate
characters, like the corporations and the ownership.
Rights.
They're having their rights stripped, right? And they even have in Spawn issue number 10. It was number 10, yeah?
I think it was 10, yeah.
Yeah, number 10. This page here, which is clearly an homage. Donny Cates is on a creative spree right here. Like, he's able to do what he wants and how he wants it, and also bring in real life individuals who are writing comics right now and drawing comics into the pages of this book as characters.
If you are a fan of comic books, which you probably are if you are watching this show, like, you need to at least try crossover. It's like nothing else being published, or maybe even that has been published.
Yeah, it's incredibly unique. So, you know, as far as if you gave up on it because of the aspects that we chatted about already in this video, I will say that what crossovers do happen are just as good as I would have hoped them to be if there was these larger, more grandiose
and we've
crossover
already had
events.
Comics in decades past with, like, Superman versus Captain America. Ooh, wonder who wins. Like,
Yeah.
It was always kind of silly and just
Right.
like a big fight, you know. And there's more meat on the bone with crossover to, like, explore. And especially when you really think about it, like, there's way more characters and titles produced through Image of a wide variety of stories and, like, genres, and all of that is at play here. So there is a lot of potential for characters that you know and comics that you know to pop up here, and they do.
Hit Girl, battles, Walking Dead zombies that are drawn in black and white and slices them up. Need I say more? Enough said. That's what it's about.